We live. Bah, 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 bah.
What a
Welcome to the cut, guys. We were supposed to be doing this tomorrow, but the way things work out,
Wait. Are we live or just live?
No, I am recording, but we're not like broadcasting live.
Okay.
You can say some wild shit. It's okay. Okay. The problem with going live is that I have to advertise going live, and if you're doing things on the fly, you can't say, "Hey, also watch us live." You have to. That takes like days of planning ahead of time, so you can have an audience. If you don't mind talking in a room by yourself, you can just start doing it randomly. But if you want an audience, you need to tell people ahead of time. Anyway, welcome to the cut. Regular cast of characters. Minus the bad guy, but we replaced him. I think we upgraded. I'm not gonna lie to you.
Hey, bad guy. I didn't say that. Country boy said that, not me. Country boy.
Send all your hate mail to 1300.
It was bad as we log in like 2 minutes later. Like, so I was like,
I know, right?
And
hear all this.
I just so happened to log in.
So we got my man Wicked Thurman, we got my man G-Dub, and we have Delvin Cox from the Delvin Cox Experience. He is here joining us. You know what I'm saying? He's gonna shoot the shit with us, and later we're gonna interview him. He's gonna tell us all about the projects, what he's working on. It's gonna be dope. But before we get started, tell the people where they can find you, where they can find your podcast, my man.
You can find me on Twitter at Delvin_Cox, and you can check out the podcast, the Delvin Cox Experience, anywhere you get podcasts. Like, there are 1,000 podcast places you can get podcasts at. I guarantee I'm on one of them things.
Yeah. You've been in the game for a while. You've been doing this, what, 5 years?
5 years doing the Delvin Cox Experience. No, 3 years doing the Delvin Cox Experience now. 2 years doing the Mic Drop podcast. So 5 years altogether.
Nice.
Jesus Christ. Nice. I know, right? I know. You know what? It's funny thing about podcasting. Podcasting is like the rap game in terms of like years. So 1 year in podcasting is like 2-3 years in the real world. You know what I'm saying? You've been doing it for a year. You're OG. You're OG doing it for a year. So somebody like you, man, you're like Harriet Tubman or Frederick Douglass out here.
Resonator.
Because what I find is that like everybody wants to do a podcast. Everybody wants to do one. I can do podcast. But I think what most people think is that what I find is that like most people think that they're going to get instant success. And it's how you deal with not having instant success that affects a lot of people. And, some people, they're good with having 5 steady listeners, 10 growing and growing and growing. Some people, I didn't get 1,000 listeners to my podcast. Well, I might need to do something else.
Yeah. Hate to break it to you. That 90% of the time, that first episode gonna get about a good 5-6 listeners.
And so 3 of them are related to you.
Yeah.
And some of them ain't gonna be your family. You're gonna be like, "Hey, mama, you listen to my podcast? You got a podcast? I done told you like 4 times."
Like, I thought you was listening.
I am still trying to get one of my brothers and sisters to listen to my podcast on a regular basis. I can't do it. I don't know what is going on. Do they not love me?
I've been recording for 5 years now. Last year is the first year anybody has listened to my podcast and like contributed in terms to like listening to the podcast. I got a Patreon. They support the Patreon and everything like that.
We just started a Patreon. I have a solid 2 Patreon subscribers. I collect a shiny $7 a month.
Hey, listen, it's some people out there ain't collecting zero. They got 2 members and they getting negative in their account. So
I tell you,
like,
one of the hardest things to do is start a Patreon because you don't know who's going to support it or not. Like when I started mine, I was nervous. I was like stressed, like, yo, am I going to get anything? I got fortunate where I kind of got a decent amount for somebody who's an indie podcaster. And it kind of grew from that. Like my Patreon does decent for what I do. Like I'll put it this way. When I get off Patreon, this is probably the first year my podcast has been profitable.
You actually make money? I swear to God, I would be happy with breaking even. If I broke even, like $30.
Yeah, if you look at like, let me start to get to the little math of things. My SoundCloud to like host a podcast costs like $130 a year. So one of the reasons why I started the Patreon was to at least cover that.
Right.
And you know, things like mics and stuff like that, the cost of your computer, you know, that stuff add up.
Yeah, it does. It does. That's why I moved. I told these guys I moved from Podbean to Speaker because I started doing the second podcast and Speaker and Podbean. I was like, yo, what I need to do multiple podcasts. And they was like, you need to move to a business plan. I'm like, chick. This is not what, I don't know what kind of operation we running here, but get this. Podbean per month is $14. The business plan is $99 a month. I'm like, wow. I don't know what you think I'm doing over here, but I'm not doing that. So I was like, that is not reasonable. You need to have an approachable plan for people who have multiple podcasts, but are just cheap indies, you know? So when I went to Speaker was like, yo, you can have many podcasts you want. You can have 10 as long as you keep it under their limit. They have a storage limit, but I'm only paying like $7. So what do I care? If I get up the storage limit, I go to their $18 plan and still be coming out ahead because I'm not paying for 2 hosts. I'm only paying for 1. You know? Anyway. We're moving on. No one wants to hear that shit.
That's technical talk. I call it technical talk. Have you ever talked to somebody and one of the things that they do is want to drop a bunch of technical jargon on you, and you like, look, bruh, speak regular English. I don't work in accounting. I don't work in engineering. English. Yeah.
Even if you're in that field, that stuff is boring. I work in IT. I don't want to talk IT. I don't. When I leave work, I don't think about this shit. I don't fix my own computer. I don't fix somebody else's computer.
Look, I don't want to talk about servers. I don't want to talk about upload, downloads, none of that shit. I want to be off. That shit.
The only person I do IT for is my wife, and because I don't have a fucking choice. I'm pretty sure my vows. I'm pretty sure it was like to death do us part, and you are my IT guy for life.
Sounds accurate.
Life.
Yeah, about right.
Anyway, man. Let's get to the root of here. Since we already talking about podcasting, it's funny because Joe Budden's is leaving Spotify, which in itself, you know, who gives a shit? Who gives a shit, right? But he made a huge stink about leaving Spotify after his 2-year deal was up. And so his deal, which he crafted originally, he didn't like the terms. He felt like he met metrics and he wasn't able to reap the benefits of those metrics, even though he crafted all of this. So when his stuff comes up, I think in September 23rd, when they started renegotiating, he felt like it was time for the big payday. You know what I'm saying? Like, hey, I done what I needed to do. You need to break a nigga off, right? But he didn't feel like he got that from Spotify, right? When he put that out publicly, Charlemagne said that Joe Budden is a person who knows his worth but doesn't know how to properly negotiate. So he put the onus on him that, hey, this is on you. You don't know what you're doing as a negotiator. You're doing bad business. You're bargaining in bad faith. This prompted Charlemagne to come back and say, just prompted Joe Budden to say that, and this is where all the clips come from, that we not the same. We not playing the same games. I I own this. This is my podcast. I run this. I can say yay or nay to anything. I can say, fuck you. I don't want this deal, and I take my goods and go somewhere else, and can still continue to make money. Whereas Charlemagne is an employee of iHeartRadio. You know what I'm saying? Kind of basically the Dame Dash thing. We're not playing the same games. Don't get blinded by the cross streets. So he's an employee. He is an employee of iHeartRadio, which I will add, Joe Budden's had some interesting points because he talks about how the Breakfast Club has been the number one show in New York, in the largest market for 10 years running. Yet you don't reap any of those benefits. They're paying you a check, and the only reason they afford to pay you that check is because they make vastly more than they're paying you.
Wait, does the Breakfast Club, is it in syndication?
Yes.
Because if it's in syndication, but does Charlemagne, is he the, I guess you would call it, the owner of the material so he can sell it in syndication? Or is it he, like you said, just an employee?
He's an employee.
Somebody else is.
He doesn't own any of that. He's basically a replaceable cog. I mean, he's a big cog, but he's a person they could say tomorrow, you're fired. I will get some other person to do you tomorrow.
Okay, because like I have one example of how you can actually make a radio show work and be profitable to you personally. That's my Dave Ramsey. Everybody knows him. If you know anything about what he does,
they talk about they sell his courses at church.
Yes,
that's how popular
Dave Ramsey started out the same way on radio, and his radio show or his radio presence blew up. So he took his radio show and he basically syndicated it, sold it to everybody. The Oprah model basically is what I call it, the Oprah model. You take what you're doing, you sell it to all kinds of stations across the country. That's where you make the bulk of your money at. Then once you start making that money, then you start matriculating into different stuff, and you start to get into what I call the middleman, which is that like, I just sell a bunch of me and other people buy it. It's free for me to do because, like, again, he's just talking, and then you make a boatload of money. But the thing is that like, if you don't own any of that merchandise, you are, like you said, just an employee, and so you're getting a check from somebody else who is making the big bucks.
I agree.
Sounds about right.
And one of the problems, and Joe Budden's exactly right. He's exactly right about Charlemagne and his criticism. But the fact that you're an employee does not mean both of these two things are not mutually exclusive. Joe Budden's can be bargaining in bad faith. And you know what I mean? In an attempt to negotiate more money from Spotify. And Charlemagne could also say, be an employee and not be able to call his own shots. Me being an employee does not mean I can't tell you I think you're going about this incorrectly.
And
I have a lot to say about this when y'all finish. I got a lot.
Okay, I just dropped one more thing. Let me drop one more thing, and so I feel like if Joe Budden has said, "Bruh, I own this shit, so I can dictate what I do with it," then, in my opinion, Charlemagne the God, which I'll be honest with you, I'm not a big fan of Charlemagne the God. I can't stand him. But if you say I own my stuff versus you who don't own your stuff, you need to shut the fuck up. That's what really he needs to do.
His argument.
Shut the fuck up
because we're not in the same lane.
Because like I own my stuff, and in actuality, if I choose to, it's possible that he could flip what he's doing into a more lucrative position than you. Then, bruh, cash your check, shut the fuck up about that particular topic, and stick to talking about the latest hip hop album and interviewing people and ragging on them, whatever that you do, and shut the fuck up, collect your 6 figures, leave it alone.
Yeah,
go ahead, my man.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead, G-Dub.
But I agree with everything y'all said. But, and I think, once again, Charlemagne too often frames it from a mutually exclusive point. Like, if you want to say, hey, brother, check this out. Call me. Should have been the first thing he said. Like, hey, holler at me. We'll, I got something for you that can maybe help you better negotiate. Or just say, hey, I think if you went about it this way, that may be more profitable. But unfortunately, that doesn't cause the conversation we're having. He has to kind of somehow make it about his, maybe his tactic or whatever the case is, similar to the Monique situation where you're like, hey, man, if I'm negotiating the way I'm doing, especially if I'm negotiating at a different level, when you go in the office, you get a check. Whereas when I go in the office, I'm negotiating like, hey, this is my intellectual property. This is something I own that I get every bit of. You want to partner with me? Cool. But everything else is up to me. So, and I think it's more or less just the way it came off. And yes, I like Joe Budden. I followed his career for a while, but somehow there's always somebody's pointing at as to the reason that what he was a part of failed, like Slaughterhouse, various deals with Def Jam and so on and so forth. He has his, if he feels like his worth is here, cool, but don't make it always someone else's fault when that said thing doesn't work out.
I like that.
Go ahead, Devin.
All right. Before I start, let me say this. I like both of the parties involved in terms of Charlemagne the God and Joe Budden. I'm a fan of both of them. With that being said, I think Joe Budden is 100% right, and I will tell you why he's right. We just see the scenario where if you don't own your stuff, it can go very bad in terms of the Nick Cannon situation, where Nick Cannon said something that was controversial. He got flack for it, which he should have, and they literally made a mission to take everything away from them. Everything he built, everything he worked hard for, they made it an effort to take it away from him. What Joe Budden is doing is building a platform where that is not possible to happen to him. They can't take away your stuff.
Right.
And the thing about with Charlemagne the God is, at any point in time, he can say something or something can come out, and all that can be taken away. And that's the biggest difference when you are an owner of something and when you are an employee, essentially. And I think that's the point Joe Budden is trying to make. Yeah, you should get your worth and stuff like that. That's very, very important. But you also have to add in the fact that as long as you're working for somebody, that all can be taken away from you. And when you're a person like Joe Budden, or even Charlemagne the God for that matter, you don't want a situation where them to bring up something from the past, like, you know what, he did X, Y, and Z at this point in time. We don't need to support him. Yeah. And then they take it away. And I think that's happened so often in our community. It's happened to Nick Cannon. It's happened to Charlemagne the God. It happens to all of us. And you got to kind of... He got
fired from HBO because of something he said, something he did. I think he was working with HBO, and it was like, he said he didn't even say it. He's still not working there. So,
well, see, I think that's the difference between, I think, the Joe Budden and the Charlemagne thing is that Joe Budden understands that he owns it. Just like Nick Cannon, he owned a lot of his stuff. So when he was, quote unquote, fired from whatever he was fired from, he was like, it don't matter to me because I'm still the producer. So I'm still going to get cut a check.
Yeah.
My face just ain't going to be the face of whatever. It's just like, because like one of the things I was saying is that like, cool, Viacom took, what is it, Wild and Out from him?
Yes.
But
which I thought he owned.
But he owned everything else associated with it. So like he could be like, well, F Wild and Out, you can have that. I'll go to Revolt, which I think P. Diddy offered him, and I can start out Wild and In. It don't matter because like as long as he don't use the outward phrase of it, he can do the same exact thing under a different name and will carry that same audience over. And I think that's the difference is that like, are you a person who can carry your audience over, or is everything that you do dictated by the man with his thumb on you?
And that's one of the things about Joe Budden and podcasting in general is that Joe Budden and the popularity of his podcast has the ability, if it doesn't work with Spotify, he can take his shit. I can go anywhere with this shit. You know, I can go to any platform or just go back to putting it out myself, and I will still be lucrative because most of those people are here to see me. Joe Budden's complaint with Spotify was twofold. Basically, he felt like they were using him for his audience and they didn't give a damn about his podcast. They were just checking off boxes. So when you see it, you're like, oh, we're going to bring in Joe Budden's. But to them, it wasn't Joe Budden. It was X rapper and his two friends have a podcast that's semi-successful. We want that because that checks off. We got our black audience coming in for that. And two, he felt like he wasn't getting the money that he thought he should get because, you know, I don't know if you guys are aware, but Spotify had brought in two major whales. One being Joe Rogan, who is like, you know, the blue whale of podcasting. He's the largest fish out there. And then he brought in Michelle Obama, who the problem is
Michelle Obama.
When you bring in Michelle Obama and when you bring in Joe Rogan, if you're a basketball team and you only got 2 max slots, where the hell did Joe Rogan fit it, dog? Where the fuck is Joe Rogan fitting this? Joe Rogan, what is Budden fitting this? If I have my max spots out, I don't necessarily need you anymore. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Let me add something else to this that he mentioned. They offered him a deal for more money, a big deal. But the thing is, it was essentially a 360 deal. They wanted everything Joe Budden. They wanted the podcast. They wanted all of his co-hosts' podcasts and shows, any project they're working on. They wanted ownership of all of that. And that's a big deal.
I think Miles said he's like, they gave us more money and it was a good deal. They wanted everything.
I will give you an example of what my man can do is that basically he can go to Sirius XM, which already has Joe Rogan. And there's a channel on Sirius XM, and I encourage everybody who has Sirius XM to at least listen to it. I don't care who you listen to Laura Coates, listen to Joe Rogan. It don't matter because I want to keep this station on. It's called Urban View on Sirius XM Radio. And I give them a free plug because those are our people who are doing satellite radio and are broadcast across the country, worldwide, whatever you want to say, and are pushing our issues and our agenda. So there is a place for Mr. Joe to go to do the same exact thing and probably will make more money than Spotify could even possibly offer him.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of places and avenues he can take it. He can take it. He can take it to Title. He can take it to Revolt. He can make it a TV show on Revolt and make a boatload of money off of that. There's a lot of avenues. I think when you are an owner of something, you have all the power in your hand, and that's what people fail to realize. Perfect example is independent artists. If you're an independent artist and you sell 50,000 copies of your album, and you're paying yourself, you got a hit.
Yeah,
it don't matter how much you sold.
You can negotiate a Master P deal. You can get a distribution deal where all you're doing is helping me distribute my podcast or my music.
And I'm gonna plug somebody who I don't know if y'all it's a white guy. It's Harry Mack on YouTube. He also is on Facebook and everything else. Harry Mack. He's an independent freestyle rapper. Okay. And my man dropped an album. In my opinion, it flopped because it wasn't commercially successful. But the thing that he does is my man, he's a freestyle rapper. And I was like, I don't know why he would drop an album. Bruh, just keep doing your freestyle thing. Make your money. Keep all of it to yourself. He has a YouTube channel, all this kind of stuff. Gets 100,000 views per whatever he puts out. And I think that the problem is that a lot of people feel like there's only one way to skin the cat. You know, I can only skin the cat front to back. And I'm like, no, there is multitudes of ways to skin the cat. I mean, you know, you could, cut the skin first, cut the hair first, whatever. And I think that that's the problem that people fall in love with is that like, there's only one way I could do something. I don't look at the other avenues that I can take in order to maximize my talents and my revenue. And I think that's the issue that I'm having with anything. Basically, that's the issue that I have with anything that Charlemagne says, is that like he looks at things myopic. He doesn't look at things as the way they are, and he doesn't look at the plethora of avenues that you can take in order to get the same results and make your money.
Knock on Charlemagne. That Charlemagne has always speaks from things from his narrow viewpoint. He has this view, like this is Charlemagne's view and the way things should be. And I always found his view to be very narrow. I am not a fan of either one of them. I find them both to be
pretentious.
Very pretentious, overly arrogant. I like, even when I listen to, because I listen to the podcast in question, and while Joe Budden's and Andrew Schultz, he had a good I listened to him when he talked about it. And, you know, he friends with, I think they do Brilliant Idiots. With Charlemagne. But he does another show with the Indian cat.
Akash.
Yeah, there you go. Anyway, I was listening to that one, and he was talking about this entire incident, and he talked about how how Joe Budden is an excellent speaker. He said he equated Joe Budden to like a politician doing a concession speech, like a very passionate, like you listen to him, you're passionate. He's a passionate loser. Not to say he's losing, but that when he talks about why things aren't working out the way they are, he's very passionate and articulate, and you're like, wow, okay, they really fucking you over. But then you find out that wasn't
always the case.
Yeah, it wasn't always the case. It wasn't like the deal that you put together, the deal that you crafted. You know what I'm saying? When you said that they were fucking you in the first deal, you crafted that deal. You told them when you first signed that deal in 2015, 20. So anyway, I don't remember. Something like that. Anyway, because it was a 2-year deal, so I'm assuming it's 2018. Yeah. That Spotify didn't know what the hell they were doing. That you worked with them to craft that deal. So if you crafted that deal, who fault is it that the deal sucked? You did that. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can't go and say that they exploiting you. You are an artist who comes from a medium that's used to being exploited. Music is used to that. You knew it. It's happened to you. You've had bad deals. So when you come into this one, you're telling me you still being exploited?
And that was part of my kind of, maybe one, because I listened to the whole thing, that I said, listen, what are you saying? Because at one point he was making it seem as if like, yo, I hit my metrics. When I go to, get that bonus, all of a sudden you move the goalpost. But if the fact is, when you crafted it, there was some type of wiggle room in there to where you could literally say, hey, I know the metric is this, but I didn't word it well enough to make sense. So it's almost like, just tell me, because I get the ownership versus an employee part, but I need to know.
I want to know.
What was it?
I want to know, do y'all want to have the black exploitation conversation as part of this argument?
This is a compliment. This is what he mentioned. He felt like he was being exploited.
Because like if we go that route, oh man, who said it? I think it was Stephen A. Smith, because he was having the conversation about your boy Steve Nash getting the Brooklyn Nets job. And basically, my man Stephen A. Smith.
We're going there. We're going there. Let me interview Devlin, and I'll let you talk about Stephen A. Smith and Steve Nash.
I will acquiesce for the moment. Go ahead.
All right, so we're gonna move on slightly. We're gonna come back. I want to interview my man's, because we're gonna let him talk about his endeavors and his ventures and what he's got going on. You know what I'm saying? So Devlin, my man. So I was on your podcast, man. It feels like a million years ago. Like I said, the podcast might as well been a million plus years ago.
Yeah, I feel like it was a while. Yeah, it wasn't that long ago either.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't that long ago, and it's so crazy because you've interviewed so many people, and since then, man, they're doing amazing things. They're doing a lot of amazing things. You know, like VV and like Raw, like Akeem. You know, both of those guys are like out there. You know, have you interviewed OTR or OTR Mike or Alex?
I have not yet. They need to come on though. They definitely need to come on.
Yeah, you need to come on. I think that would be great. So.
Yo, I'm still trying to get that guest spot. Yo, Devin.
Hit me up. You're always welcome on.
Boy, holla at me.
Yeah. I think I will exchange information so y'all can talk, y'all can speak. So tell the people about your podcast. Tell us what it's about, man. Your mission, what you're trying to attempt to do, and any projects you got going on.
Well, you know, the podcast is all about diversity. You know, the tagline for the podcast is I'm on a one-man mission to unite our culture through diversity. And I kind of live by that in terms of I have all kind of people on the podcast. So many times when we, as Black podcasts, I feel like we only speak to our own people, which is great. And I think we need to do that. We need to champion our people, things like that. I try to be as diverse as possible. That way we can hear every side of the conversation and we can learn from each other with that. I feel like that's very important to me. So I kind of always have a lot of people on in terms of background. Sometimes, one time I may have a pastor on, one time I may have a Trump supporter on, one time I always try to give both sides of the story to hear them out, just because I think it's important that we know what they're thinking and we learn from that. Because we so often we'll hear certain things and we'll hear, but we won't listen. We don't see why this person thinks like this, and we don't see why. And I feel like we always have this middle ground where we can stand on. We can either agree to disagree and find the better in people. I try to find the better in people, and usually it works. But worst case scenario, we'll learn something from the situation,
right?
And that'll make us better and wiser to things that happen in our society. I think it's very important to do that.
Right. Yeah. Right. That's awesome.
So, Mr. Cox, I have a question for you.
Be my guest.
What do you think is the biggest issue that we as a people or Black people or whatever face in, I guess, broadening the array of perceptions of us and the way we perceive ourselves?
Ooh, there's a lot of things I can talk about in terms of that.
Wow.
How much time you got?
Hey, I just want to preface with I studied communications and I studied interviewing. And so, you know, if you're ready to be interviewed, holla at your boy. I can do that.
I'm
so
always
go ahead.
Really happy for that. So let's start the first thing. I think one of the biggest problems we have in the Black community is we don't know our worth.
Right.
And that comes with every aspect of life. We don't know our power that we have. We don't know the power we have. We don't know that we control every aspect of life in this country in terms of entertainment, in terms of medicine. If you look at the most prominent people in Black culture today, they run a lot of things in this country.
Right.
We as Black people define the swagger of America. Right. But yet that often gets overlooked so often. Our women get neglected. Our women get put down. But yet everybody want to be twerking like Cardi B. They want to be dressing like Meg Thee Stallion. All these women out here getting fake asses and stuff. It's like what my man said. They want to be us, but they don't want to be us.
Oh yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Everybody want to be a nigga until it's time to be a nigga.
Exactly. Yeah. And we have to learn to take advantage of that.
Right.
And promote Blackness, because Blackness is very important. Yeah. And when we realize how great we are, the world will realize how great and how important we are. I think everything that happened this year is an eye-opener to America in terms of these riots, the protests and stuff like that. And when they first started, we truly seen the power of Black America in terms of how that after the George Floyd incident, we seen America co-side and just be subservient to Black people in terms of like, oh, Aunt Jemima, she's offensive. Let's get off the pancakes. Yeah. Uncle Ben's right. We need to change this. We need to change that because they saw an angry Black America and they were scared. They feared it. And I think that's that power. We have that power to show that, hey, we can change the world. Like this last election, not the main election that happened with Clinton and stuff like that, the midterms.
Yeah, 2018.
The Democrats took over the House because Black women went out and voted.
Right.
That's huge.
Yeah.
And this is something that happens all the time. But yet we do all these things in terms of voting and we don't realize our power, so we get stepped on all the time.
Right.
Okay. Since you started discussing politics, I want to stay with that subject. How do you feel about the Joe Biden Harris ticket versus the Trump Pence ticket?
I feel like this. I get people's complaints about Joe Biden and Kamala Harris.
Yeah.
But you also have to look at the other side and what they have given us thus far.
Right.
And I tell everybody this all the time. If you're happy with the way this country is right now, be my guest and vote for Trump and Pence. Because that's what you're going to get. You're going to get more of this. You're going to get more of the excuses. You're going to get more of the boycotts and rioting and excuses made. You're going to get more of the anytime a Black person is shot, it's a reason why they're shot. Oh, it's because he wasn't complying. He wasn't doing what he's supposed to do. I feel like we don't know what we'll get with Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, but we know that we can hold them accountable. That's the main difference I have right now with those two parties.
Well, I want to push back a little bit on that whole you don't know what you're going to get, because I feel like one of the things is that you do actually know what you're going to get. Okay. You're going to get more of Obama. And one of my biggest complaints about Obama is that like when he had the 60 vote majority in the Senate and I think he had like a 1-2 vote majority in the House, he didn't do what Trump would have done, which is push through whatever legislation you want and be damned on the other end. But this is what America will look like moving forward, and let them motherfuckers come unwind it later. This is what I want.
I'm glad you brought that up.
Biggest complaint about Obama. And I feel like if you had a Biden-Harris ticket, what you would get is an America moving more towards what me, you, and everybody else would want for America versus what these country backwater fucking hicks want for America.
I'm glad you brought this up. This is something I want to talk about for a while. The conversation has always been, this is something I want to address right now. I feel like white America is trying to downplay what Obama has done for Black America.
Right.
And I feel like it's working because you'll see a lot of African Americans say, well, what Obama did for us. And it's almost, it's at a point I agree in a sense, but then I have to look back at where we were at in the first 4 years of Obama and then the last 4 years of Obama. People forget that when Obama took office, the country was in a recession. Gas was like higher than crack prices.
$4 a gallon.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was about $4.
$3.50.
Yeah. And everything in this country was completely jacked up. We was in a war. We was in the middle of a war that we probably shouldn't have been in.
Right.
And it kind of like America kind of looked at like, okay, nigga, you fix this. That's what they kind of did.
Yeah.
And he got a lot of flack while trying to fix that. Like I know everybody keeps saying, like one of the things that white people always say about Obama, oh, the drone strikes, the drone strikes, the drone strikes. Nobody talks about the war that he was in the middle of a war that was not started by him. He inherited a war during his presidency. And yes, drone strikes are kind of messed up and things like that. But it kept Americans alive. So it's like, it's a catch-22. Would you rather him do drone strikes or would you rather him put our troops in that battlefield and risk their lives?
Yeah, I'm with that. So, it's about 10 minutes. About 10 minutes in. Let me transition to something a little lighter. I know you're a comic book fan. What are you reading? What are you reading right now?
I'm gonna talk about my man comic book. So to promote him, his name's Rodney Barnes.
I did something the other day, and I was like, "This art is amazing." I think he was
Rodney Barnes.
Yeah,
you guys may not know Rodney Barnes, but y'all know Rodney Barnes, and I'm gonna tell you why. You guys watch the Wu-Tang series on Hulu?
I haven't, but I've been meaning. I have that in my queue, but I haven't watched it.
Okay, he wrote that. He also wrote The Runaways on Hulu, and I'm going to give you something that you definitely know. Writer of the Boondocks cartoon series.
He was a writer on the Boondocks?
Yes. So all the episodes of the Boondocks you love, he wrote.
Wow.
So I think for people our age, and I'm just making an assumption that Devin, that you around my age, is that like
I am
it
old.
was it was an essential expression of how life was for our people who were that age, and we ride with that.
Yes, very much so.
I'm looking at him now, and he was a writer, producer on a lot of black sitcoms. My Wife and Kids, Everybody Hates Chris, Runaways, American Gods, Wu-Tang. Wow, this is quite a resume.
He's already announced this, I think. It was already announced. He's working on a Tiger Woods series right now. And I'm not going to say the other thing he's working on. But yeah, he's working on a Tiger Woods series. That was announced, so I can say that. But he's a great writer. He also writes comic books. He writes this comic book called Philadelphia, which is black vampires in Philadelphia.
Oh.
my
man, who was it? Vampire in Brooklyn. That's what it brings the connotation of in my mind. Vampires in Brooklyn.
Think about that a little bit.
Was that Eddie Murphy? Yes. Eddie Murphy, Kadeem Harrison, and Angela Bassett. Wasn't that?
That is correct.
Wasn't that her first, like, I want to call it major role in a movie?
Yes. I want to say yes, that's correct.
Yo, and to be honest with you, anybody who was under the age of, I say, about 35 does not know what I'm talking about.
Don't worry, that's not really a demographic. We do a lot of 35 to 44 mark.
Okay, so they would know what I'm talking about. Good. Oh, since we're on comic books, Devlin, I want to see how you felt about their two trains of thoughts going with the passing of Chadwick Boseman. We all know he was Black Panther.
Yes.
So, two trains of thoughts. One is that, somehow, some way, some form, we need to get Michael B. Jordan to be the new Black Panther. Nope. The second train of thought is that we need to find a way to get what's her name his girlfriend to be Black Panther. Where do you fall?
Okay. I will say this about Michael B. Jordan. The Killmonger character, while people liked him, was a very flawed individual. And I don't think he represents what you'd want in a Black Panther.
Right.
And I'll tell you why. If you watch that movie, Killmonger was saying some real shit, but he also killed a lot of black women. That was one of the main things. He didn't have any problem with killing all black queens. And nobody says nothing about that.
That was the time when the movie, that was a moment where I was like, nigga, I ain't with you no more. He was in the movie, and when he transformed into Black Panther, took the plant and was like, burn it. And she's like, what? She's like, burn it. And then I think he kills her.
He just choked her. I was like, okay.
And I'm like, I don't like you now. That's not okay.
I think if you watch the movie, there are several moments in the movie that show you that let you know, all right, we can't fuck with him. He may be right on some things. Like, and the first moment is when he kills his girlfriend.
Yeah. I'm like,
yeah.
Yeah, and she was ride or die. But this is a dumbass plan, and she's like, I love you anyway. I'm with you. And he's still like, like wow.
And remember, right before they fought, he said, "I killed in Iraq. I killed right here in Africa." I'm like, "Oh, really?" Wow.
Yeah.
And people like, "Oh, kill," and people overlooked that completely. To your point, as if he never said it. He was just been a great king because he was about that black dude. We went from people not even knowing where we were to you about to go to war.
Yes.
I can guarantee you, and I don't want to paint a picture of somebody that didn't happen in the movie, but I can guarantee you that had he actually been able to do what he wanted to do, he would have been a dictator. There is no doubt in my mind that he would have been a fucking dictator. He was working that way anyway. He was like, oh, I'm gonna do this. But once I get all I want, he about to wreck shop. He was about to shut it down.
Yeah. His whole plot was to go to America and other countries and take over for quote to liberate black people. But how long do you think that's going to last? He's going to be the king of black people.
Yeah.
So y'all are settled. It's consensus. Killmonger out.
Yeah.
How do you feel about girlfriend being in?
I don't think
Lupita?
Yes, Lupita. That's what I'm. Thank you for. There is a I guess you would call it Facebook campaign for. Well, why don't we let her be Black Panther? Since
people talk about Siri too, her sister too.
Right,
she was, and that's what I was gonna say. She was actually the Black Panther for a little while in the comic book.
That's what I was gonna say.
And so I was kind of wondering why was everybody like, oh, who's gonna be next? And they putting pictures of every black actor. I'm like, hey, hold on, time out. First off, let the dude get buried first.
Yeah.
Second of all, go ahead and just progress with the comics. Just how they were, because there's a time where she takes a heart-shaped herb. She has the technical genius. I mean, like I said, the good thing about comic book movies is there is a version of every character that you can build off of that's already written. So
Black Panther is a mantle. Black Panther, like Captain America, like Iron Man, is not a person. It's a mantle. Killmonger, when he took the heart-shaped herb, he was Black Panther. You know what I'm saying? If M'Baku had a beat T'Challa in armed combat, he would have been Black Panther. So Black Panther is not just Chadwick. It could be anybody as long as you can win in armed combat. And this is the problem I had with Siri. She is not ready. You telling me she gonna beat M'Baku in armed combat or any of them guys? No, she's not. That's not what she does. She was in this scenario. If to quote like James Bond, she is M.
Yes.
James Bond gadget guy. That's her job.
Q. That's Q.
That's it. Q. If you ask Q, hey, I need you to go in the field. I need you to be James Bond. He gonna be like, nah, I do gadgets. I make bombs.
We're not talking about his sister. We're talking about the chick that he was dating.
In the comics, Siri was Black Panther, and a lot of people were pushing that narrative that Siri should be the new Black Panther. But in the book, in the movie, in the MCU, she wasn't set up that way. She was set up to be her tech advisor. So to tell her, oh, now you're going to be in the field, you're the new queen, that don't feel right. Now, his girl, she did do field ops. She could win in armed combat because she could fight. You know, and Okoye too, even though Okoye was, part of the guard, but it's another person who will whoop your ass. You know what I'm saying?
And again, we all like her anyway, so it wouldn't be a far leap to see her take a major role because again, I think she received heavy praise, and I think that's one of the reasons why she left The Walking Dead. Was because she saw that, look, The Walking Dead is cool, but my worth is over here making movies where I can do a 6, 8, 10-week shoot, make a couple $1 million versus being out here in the hot ass Atlanta for 10 weeks and only make about $1 million or $2
for 10 weeks. Anyway, what were you going to say, Devin?
I think the most important thing when it comes to this is, and I think Chadwick, not to speak for the dead, but I think he would agree with this. the character of Black Panther has to go on.
Yes.
Right.
Period. Because he knew this, and that's why he did this while stricken with cancer, which couldn't have been easy. I think he knows the importance of this character.
Yeah.
And
he
would want this character to be honored and to go on as much as possible because he inadvertently started a movement that cannot go back.
No.
Yeah.
Like Black Panther is in a lot of people's top 5 movies, not even just MCU movies.
Yeah.
It's one of those movies that broke through beyond the shadow of doubt. Like people, that movie was going to be like the sequels were going to be huge. They were going to be huge movies, and I feel like it's still too early to talk about.
It is
what to do with the character, whether you recast them or give the mantle to somebody else. If I was making the movie, I would take a break from Black Panther for a while to get away from it. Maybe 5 years.
Good luck with that.
The funny part is they already were doing that. They already had this 3-year gap that I think they announced it 2023. So they already had this long gap for the next movie while they worked on the perfect script.
No,
and then all these things happened.
No,
I
think think Black Panther 2 was a 2021 or 2022 movie.
2022.
Well, they want to start filming in 2021.
But they would have started filming in 2021, which is next year.
In 2021. Okay, but that still would have put them out for a timeline of 2022. Things happen, maybe 2023. Either way, that's still a significant gap from when the first movie came out. That was 3 years ago? Already.
You gotta also take into effect how coronavirus affected all the timelines. And so my 2022, 2021 filming was based upon there being no coronavirus. And so, because remember with coronavirus, I think that basically pushed the MCU and DCU. They pushed all of their films out at least 1 to 2 years.
But nothing came out this year. But the only movie they really had was Black Widow.
They got they had actually started filming. I believe it was. Who was it? They had started filming. There were 2 or 3 MCU.
Well, they're filming a lot of stuff.
They had started filming. And then when the coronavirus hit, everything shut down and they didn't have a plan of when or per se they were going to pick back up production. And then with everything being delayed, they also pushed back a lot of the premieres of a lot of these movies because I think, Wonder Woman was supposed to come out, in April? And we're looking at now
supposed to come out
November, April, March?
In March?
Yeah, it was supposed to come out in March.
It was supposed to come out in March.
Yeah, it was supposed to come out in March. They didn't push that thing.
It's out indefinitely. They don't know when it's going to come out because they don't want to put it out on the streaming platform. They want you to see it.
Yeah, I think, Christopher Nolan's Tenet, which was supposed to be which was supposed to be
reviews. Is it out
now? I think
it's out now.
It's out in theaters.
But you got to find a theater that's open close to you. And here in North Carolina, I think you probably have to go to South Carolina because their governor is with Trump. They don't give a fuck. So if you want to go to South Carolina and risk yourself, you can go to South Carolina. And risk yourself.
Sounds like he should be in the Golden Girls. He sounds like Blanche's brother or one of her girlfriends. When the state of South Carolina, we don't do.
It seemed like he need a khaki suit and a straw hat. I declare.
Seersucker. He needs seersucker. That's what he needs. Seersucker.
You know who he remind me of? And they didn't even talk like each other. But remember in Django, Big Daddy. Remember Big Daddy?
Oh man.
Big Daddy? No.
Oh shoot. But so because I remember there was a couple of movies on my to see list, and Tenet was one of them because I like John David, what's his name?
Washington.
John David Washington. Yeah. I love him. He was awesome in Ballers on HBO, and I want to see what
he was in Black Klansman too.
He was on what?
Klansman.
Yeah, and so I wanted to see him in Tenet because again, Tenet was sold to us as, you know, anything Christopher Nolan does, you know, it'll be an experience.
Yeah, he likes to play with.
I'm not. Again, I haven't read any of the reviews on Tenet because I don't want to spoil it by reading what some other people got to say about Tenet. Because, like, basically, I feel like a lot of people have came out against Tenet, but I feel like most of their preferences was probably because they just wanted Inception 2. Yeah, they wanted Inception 2. That's what they wanted. Either Inception 2 or a prequel to Inception.
And people didn't even understand Inception. People still don't know whether he was still dreaming or if the bottle cap, the little cap stopped spinning. So
not to get in too deep into Inception, but I don't think that was his. I don't think that top was his. I think he had a different little marker to let you know whether or not. At the end, when he had it spinning, I don't think that was his marker. Like
it was because he got that from. He got that from his wife. That's the whole reason why he used.
Yeah, that top was his wife's thing. That wasn't his.
Talisman.
Anyway, it's been too long. I'm sorry.
In my opinion, Inception is one of the best movies I have ever watched. And if you get me to talking about Inception,
if you watch it and you paying attention, it's not nearly as complicated as it's about as complicated as Lovecraft Country, which I plug every episode because it's fucking amazing.
I told you I can't watch Lovecraft Country. I want to watch it in one sitting. So I'm waiting for the season to be over with.
I am sorry
so I
that
can just watch all of it.
But I want to tell you that if you're not watching it, you missing out because it's absolutely amazing.
And each episode is like its own show, so it's gonna be like, okay, what happened to that? It's gonna almost feel like, wait a minute, what happened?
Like
it can get lost.
The first two episodes, last episode was like a horror movie. This past episode that came out this weekend is like Indiana Jones. It's like every episode has been something completely different. And honestly, it got Omar in it. It's got Juicy Smollett's sister. Hey, I'm in it. I loves it. And it was written by a white guy. The book was written by a white guy. And when I saw it, I was like, what you know about black people? Apparently he did quite a bit of research, and I've been doing the Black History podcast, and this is time framed around that same time period. So when I see stuff, I'm like, oh, that's accurate. They live in Chicago. This is where a lot of black people moved after the Great Migration. You know what I'm saying? They got sundown towns. That was a real fucking thing. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. A lot of the issues that he dealt with. I mean, when I'm watching, I was like, yo, this is real time period.
Quick question though. Why does everybody make it seem like as they were traveling in the first two episodes, they were not going through the South. They were going north. So they were going exactly. I'm like, they're not going through the South. Don't put that on us. Don't put that on us.
Here's the thing about the South, the North. You still face racial oppression. It wasn't the South. It wasn't the Jim Crow South, but it wasn't sweet in the North either. It's not like you went. It's not like you went to the North and all of a sudden you went Oz and everything was unicorns and rainbows. Yeah. No, they still fucking hate your ass.
I often tell people that the advantages of living in North Carolina is that they hid most of their hicks up in the mountains. So if you are ever going up I-85 or you're going up I-26, and my people from Atlanta or Georgia area know what this is, you will run into the same bullshit that you meet in Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana, Arkansas, all those kind of places. They just were pushed, far enough away to where they could ignore them.
Yeah.
Because Mississippi gets the word when it comes to racism. It's like we rank number 1. I don't care what nobody say. Like, because you said, where you from? You say you from Florida.
Miami, Florida. Yep.
Yeah.
Is it like that out there? Because Miami is such a seem like such a metropolitan area. Like it doesn't. I mean, because like outside of Miami, I'm sure it gets crazy. But in Miami, is it like your typical southern city, or is it kind of moved to almost like that next level to where it's like, hey, we in Miami?
Y'all like a northern. What is it about Florida? The more north
the panhandle.
Now, the more north you go, the more south you get. You know what I'm saying? So,
yeah, you're in the panhandle, you're good.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm the guy who lives
Miami's
there. Go
weird.
ahead.
Miami's weird because Miami is predominantly Black and Hispanic, but it's interesting because the racism doesn't necessarily exist for white people. It exists for Hispanics people because most of Miami is predominantly Hispanic and white Hispanics, and they are generally racist towards Black people and Black Hispanics because a lot of people come over here from Cuba.
Yeah,
made a living for themselves, they made a life for themselves.
Yeah,
and they kind of have that mindset, and they kind of have their prejudice against Black people. So it's very fascinating to watch that play out because you will see a lot of times you will see Hispanic people beating the shit out of Black people in terms of police brutality. So when you see the cases of police brutality with white people in other places, we see it here with Hispanics.
Wow. And it's because I remember watching a documentary and they were talking about a lot of people who fled Cuba were the ones who were almost co-opted by the whites that came over to colonize Cuba.
Yes.
So when Fidel Castro took over, it was like, our guy is out, so we need to leave. So once we get to America, we're going to be anti-Castro, anti-everything, not necessarily because he was this horrible guy, but because we feel like he wasn't our guy. He wasn't, putting money in our pocket. He wasn't co-opting what we were doing. It was the rich white bankers or the mafia, whomever was in charge prior to Castro taking over. And so when they came to America, it was like, hey, Castro's the worst. He put us out. People living bad. But it wasn't necessarily because he was just a dictator. It was because a certain regime of people's time was up and they were pretty much put out.
The funny thing about history is defined by the winners. So if you
except in the South.
Yeah, except in the South.
Except in the South.
Yeah. The South gets to act like they were winners. The South gets to act like they were winners. When after Lincoln died and Andrew Johnson took over, Andrew Johnson was like, yo, this is going.
He was a Southerner.
These niggas do what the hell they were doing before. Hey, you good with me. You can go back to being a racist. Keep oppression tight. This is what we doing. So I mean, Reconstruction died with Lincoln, and then when Johnson came in, he was like, "Yo, I don't give. Do what you do. Keep them niggas subservient. We gonna go back to the way we were doing it before." Anyway.
And Devin, is that true? Is that true?
Yes.
I mean, that part. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest problems with America. America ignores the fact that they have systematically, from generation to generation, found a way to oppress Black people in different ways. Yeah. And they are the masters of it. People can say whatever they want to in terms of, America's a lot better than what it was back then. Yeah, I get that. But when you have a system that is literally designed at every corner to disenfranchise Black people and minorities, you have a problem. And eventually, they are going to revolt. Like any great empire, you can only be on top for so long before the people revolt if you're not feeding those people. And that's what's happening now.
And I think my favorite example of this is the Federal Housing Administration. Because one of the things that they did was they built the sprawling suburbs that most of us live in today. And they built that on the backs of racism because they basically put in most of the covenants that Black people couldn't own these houses. And they basically backed funding these suburbs when no bank would. So you basically are building a house on on building housing on the government's dime that Black people can't have, that all white people are going to move into. And what followed next was all of the jobs. Yeah. So anybody who complains about the inner city, fuck you. The government gave us that.
Those covenants basically said that you were not allowed to sell your house to a person of they had races in mind. Like they were like, this person, this person, this person, this person. You can only sell your house to a certain race. Primarily it was white people. I think they had some clauses for some people who are okay if you're white passing or whatever, but for the most part, it was just white folks. And the funny part about that is those covenants stayed legal in a lot of states until the 60s. To the 60s. We're talking about 30, 40 years where it's like strong. So I'm talking about from the start of the Great Migration in during World War I all the way to the 60s, where they're like, you can't live here because of the color of your skin. You can't own land here, even if you got the money. I legally can't sell it to you. That's some bullshit. Anyway, man, we're getting here. If I let this happen, we're gonna be 2 hours in, and I'm not gonna
Because when you get into the detail, and see, the beauty is nobody's just talking crazy though. Nobody's like, because see, what happens is, you know what I'm saying? What happens is the Kundalini of the situation is inserted. You dig? And see, what happens is Whitey in his wings flap and make the eagle on the dollar.
Not to diss somebody, but I feel like that, in my opinion, what happened to Nick Cannon is that, like, bruh, if you know your facts and you stand to them, you are fine. But the moment you start neglecting doing your research and just start spewing bullshit, that's kind of where you start to run into a problem.
He messed up when he tried to start getting into arguments about, being a Black Israelite. That's a sketchy topic and a very sensitive subject for a lot of people, Black people included. If you ever met Black Israelites, they are very passionate. And if you ever met Jewish people and their opinion of Black Israelites, they have a very passionate anti-opinion about them. So when you bring those two groups together, the moment he started talking about that, I was like, nah, nigga, don't do that. Don't do that.
And it seemed like he was talking to himself because Professor Griffin's like, okay, I hear what you're saying. I'm like, dog, reel him back in. Be like, whoa. Because at least Griffin was like, everything I say is facts. Now, because I was in this group, I was able to kind of, they blackballed me out the door because I am, Mr. Militant, I'm Professor Griff, so on and so forth. And, he has said comments in the past about, different groups, and that caused him to be that way. But you're on like your fourth show, you on the radio, you on your fourth show. And to me, he wasn't not necessarily reeled in like he didn't know anything, but I don't feel like you either got to stand on it and be like, this is what I said. In no way, shape, or form did that mean this. Because when he dropped the page-long apology, I was like,
what's funny, something similar happened to Ice Cube. Ice Cube he's a Muslim, and he always backed the Nation of Islam.
Man, fuck Ice Cube.
I love Ice Cube. Don't talk about Ice Cube.
No, fuck Ice Cube. Because what he said is some bullshit.
Anyway.
Ice Cube was basically telling people not to vote. That's basically what Ice Cube is saying. And I say, fuck Ice Cube. Ice Cube don't know shit.
This is not the incident question. The incident question was about, is Israel. Anyway, people were like, hey, he out here being anti-Semitic. And when they asked him about it, Ice Cube was like, it is what it is. I stand by that. Like, here's my thing. If you're going to be an asshole, if you're going to say wild shit, this is for anybody. You're on the internet, you say wild shit, and I think we talked about this, Devlin. I think you were the one who no, it wasn't
probably.
You.
It probably was because I if we're gonna talk about that, Akeem, my boy, I love Akeem to death. And one of the reasons why I love Akeem is he will say wild shit. He will say wild shit all the time, and he will stand by it, whether you 100%. Like him or not.
You cannot. This is why Akeem wants me to come on his show to debate politics. And one of the reasons why I'm like, no, is two things. One, I don't believe in your point. I don't like I feel like I am right and you are wrong, and there's no like it doesn't make sense for me to debate you know what I'm saying, something that's wrong. I don't want to give validity to a point that I feel like has no volition. That's not fair to people, not fair to me. And two, I can't convince you of shit. People have their opinion of things, and they're not going to be swayed no matter how right I think I am. So why would I come on your show and do this to me?
Wait, is he the one that was trying to dish Joe Biden?
Yes. And I got on his case. Me and him had multiple conversations about that. I'm like,
multiple.
If you're gonna say whether you like Joe Biden or not, if you're gonna say point that picture of Joe Biden, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that at all.
Yeah. No,
but
I don't.
You can't say that one side and then say I don't like the other side as well, but never talk about the other side.
Yeah. Or you can't say that and not give people options. The problem I have with this is that we had options. During the primary, you can pick whoever. They had a cast of characters that you could have backed. But at this point, there are only two sides, and I need you to pick one of them motherfuckers. The idea that you keep going and blasting Joe Biden is not fair to anybody. This is what people are like, I don't want the lesser of two evils. You're not getting the lesser of two evils. You're getting everything you have right now and what can be fucking worse. It can always be worse. You know what I'm saying? Black people we got the 14th Amendment, we got the 15th Amendment. We were making progress. When Lincoln died, when Andrew Johnson came into power, it went fucking backwards.
South.
You can lose. In the South. It went backwards in the South, which was primarily what most of the black people were. There were 8 million black people in America at the time, and 7 million of them were in the South. So it went backwards for primarily all black men in the South. So when you tell me that Trump is, or don't vote for Joe Biden, or don't vote at all, that's bullshit. And when you talk about Ice Cube how to vote, that's bullshit. It could be worse.
I give you two examples. I give you two examples of how it got worse. My one example is if you historically look and do your research, you will find out that the Cherokee Indians were on the side of the Confederacy. And with them being on the side of the Confederacy, guess what happened? Yeah, guess what happened when the Confederacy lost? They made the Cherokee Indians give freedmen, the black people, black freedmen, they made them give them the 40 acres and a mule. And guess what happened? Within one generation, those black people had built upon everything that was started. That is, and part of me is looking at it and trying to find exactly how I can prove it. But in my opinion, those are the people who actually built Greenwood in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Those descendants.
What happened?
I can't find the exact proof of that, but I am leaning towards that being the case, so you can see how black people built.
They moved most of the Native Americans to Orlando, Oklahoma, like in the late 1800s. They moved all of these tribes to Oklahoma, so they were the Native Americans were very, very close to building a Native American state. Like, this is our land, this is where we live. And then at some point, America decided they wanted Oklahoma. Like, you got to get the fuck out. So they took them and moved them out of that state. At the time when they were there, they were black people were free. So a lot of them moved to Oklahoma because this was a very unclaimed territory that was very advantageous to black people. They were not treating black people negatively like you would get in other places in the South. You could go to Oklahoma and we could start our own place. So black people wanted to come there because they were thinking, okay, if Native Americans gonna start their own state, we gonna get in there with them. We gonna do that shit. When they moved the Native Americans out, there was a time period before Oklahoma was a state where it was still advantageous for black people to live there. You still got treated very, very, very much better. So they congregated in Tulsa, in places like that, up until the turn of the century, when J.B. Stratford had a conversation with Booker T. Washington. Booker T. Washington was like, yo, we need to have our own. Like, it's cool that Tulsa is doing that thing, but black folks need their own place. So black people, him and with one other guy, got together and bought land in Greenwood and said, we are only selling this land to other black folks. So they built the strip, and then from there, black people were like, oh, because Tulsa was an oil town, you can make more money there than you can make anywhere else in the country. So they flooded there as domestic servants, and they lived in Greenwood, where they didn't have to deal with white folks at all until you went to work.
And like I was saying was that that was part of the thing that the Union or the Americans or the U.S. forced upon the Indians is that, y'all got to give African American freedmen they do. But it's funny because they made them do that, but when you talk about the Southern white people, they didn't make them do it. So that's the reason why I said that whole area out in Oklahoma and everything that happened with Greenwood, I think, is a descendant of the fact that the Cherokee were forced to give us our due. And the same thing happened throughout North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia. Same thing. People were forced to give black people their due until Abraham Lincoln was shot, and then everything went haywire.
It went haywire.
So, because in actuality, we are really supposed to own pretty much the whole coastal North and South Carolina. That was what was given to black people.
Yeah, you're not getting that.
but I'm just saying that was given to us. That was where we were supposed to actually be after we were freed, but they were supposed to have pushed us all to that area.
Yeah,
what happened moving forward. They took all of it back from us. So
once they was it fit now, I'm not gonna go there because I'm getting
that's a whole nother conversation for another time. My man trying to get up out of here. Go ahead.
You're just trying to do a whole other conversation. I don't know how we got here. I promise you I had plans to talk about Steve Nash, but it's okay because we still talk about oppression. We still got there. You know what I mean? Anyway, we're gonna go ahead and wrap this up. I don't want to take no more of your time because this will be 2 hours. We talked about before this. You talk about 2-hour conversations, and we was working our way to a 2-hour conversation. It's already 1:16. So before we get out, go ahead.
I told my man, just go ahead and hit the clip button and just make it a 2. Clip button, make it a 2. You just hit the clip button.
Here's the thing: if you do that, I have to have 2 distinct topics. So I got the Joe Budden joint. You know what I'm saying? But I wouldn't know where the other cutoff is. So a lot of times, like the last week, we had just one continuous conversation, and breaking an entire conversation up into 2 episodes doesn't seem fair. If you have 2 different separate topics that we talked about, then I can do that. But if we have one continuous free-flowing conversation and to say, oh, that's the end, that feels unfair to a free-flowing, conversation.
I will say this. I think it all kind of came full circle with this conversation because we ended the conversation with black ownership.
Yeah.
And that's what the whole Joe Budden conversation was about.
Yeah. See, keep it together.